If you write anything on your computer, you need to.
Just about ready here. Just gonna wait a minute, see if anybody comes in. I will point out, I've added a couple links to the description down below. Some of the things we're going to be using later on today that are very handy when doing any kind of vehicle work. Not necessarily just porting, but any vehicle work for Arma 3. One of them is the engine, gearbox, and suspension calculator. That can be found on the Bohemia forums on a post by Red Phoenix. Tons of great information. We are just going to use the gearbox and suspension portion of this today because this is a quick and dirty config. I'm just outlining the basics on how to get a vehicle in. There's a whole lot of fine-tuning that goes into vehicles once you get them in game, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that today. But give this a read if you plan on doing any kind of vehicle work for Arma 3. It's well worth not just reading all this, but actually having these on hand. Like today, we are going to be using the suspension calculator. Very useful tool. And you can locate that down here. You just keep going down until you find a funny looking car. There we go. And this talks about a bunch of the suspension components that are in the physics HPP file and how to tweak them and what different things cause different effects on the vehicle and how to adjust them to get it to do exactly what you want. This is going to be the portion we're going to be using today, and these are going to be 3 of the big ones that we adjust once we get that far along in the process of porting this vehicle. I've done quite a bit since the last video, but most of it was just to clean some things up and get prepared to do this second portion. One thing you will notice, I cleaned up all of the RV mats and some of the textures. What I'd originally done was I copied all the files over from the Arma 2 data pack into my Humvee file. It included everything Humvee related that was inside of that folder in the data pack. So that included the anti-tank and anti-air Humvees and the machine gun Humvees, none of which we need. All we're doing is the unarmed base Humvees. So I went through, and one easy way to do this, and this is how I should have done it in the first place, is I just went to Mass Textures, renaming, and I went and I removed everything that was not one of these one of these RV mats or the related textures, and that will make this a whole lot easier to work with. It's a whole lot less work because I'm not doing all the RV mats and all the textures for 5 or 6 different variations of the Humvee, but it does leave a lot of stuff out. So later on, if I come through and I decide that I want to do those other Humvees, I'm going to have to come in here on their P3D and find out which textures and RV mats I'm missing and make sure that I have them transferred over into my data file, which is no big deal. I mean, eventually I might decide to go and do that. But this is a whole lot cleaner. I've gone through, I have all my RV mats already pathed correctly. For those of you that didn't see the last video, what I mean by pathing is I made sure that all the texture paths in these RV mats are pathed to the correct texture, and I have that texture here inside of my data file. So all this stuff in all of these RV mats is all here and where it should be, and it's all pointing to the correct thing. So that boring part's out of the way. What we are going to do today is add in the extra little stuff here that is needed to get this in game so we can actually go in and finally start testing this. Let me just reload this. Okay, so what we did the last time, we brought over all our textures, we got all our files all set up. We went through and we changed our proxies to the correct proxies, and that was it. A long process, took a lot of work, and killed all my time. So today, what I want to start out doing is I want to... Too many of these open. Okay, here's the one I've been working on. I want to do work on the geometry LOD, and we're going to create a physics LOD, a geometry physics LOD. We are going to edit the memory points here, and then we are going to work on our config files. I'll explain why I have these set up the way I do. There's a couple different ways that you can set yours up. It's all up to you. But first things first, we're going to go ahead and get onto this geometry LOD here. Now, your geometry LOD defines mass. It defines, people bumping into things. It does not define the physics. The physics, which Arma 3 uses, is defined in this new geometry physics LOD. Now, I've already made this one here, but I'm going to show you how you can make a quick and dirty one. Your physics LOD really should be very simple. Go ahead and turn this down real quick. Hear me a little better? Yeah, so your PhysX LOD should be very simple. Like even 56 points and 42 faces, I think, is still too high. But I can come back later and I can work this and get it down. That's not a problem. But in my geometry LOD, I have weight assigned. You'll see, I think this is, yeah, I've already gone ahead and deleted the weight off of here. The regular Humvee, because I haven't saved this yet, has a complete mass of 2,791, I think it's probably kilos. It may be pounds. Arma does back and forth all the time. But 2,791.326 units. What we want to do, because Arma 3 runs different than Arma 2 did, is we're going to want to reassign this mass. Going to want to even it out. Make sure that the vehicle's balanced. Because Arma 3 does not like having the weight distributed in these geometry blocks like Arma 2 had. We're going to leave the wheels. As you see, I have each wheel set to 50. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create some new blocks. Create a box. And I'm going to want this to be 0.1. 0.1. 0.1. That'll work. Yep, nice little box. Gonna bring this up to the top view. And I want this centered over my wheel. Any wheel, pick one, doesn't matter. I'm gonna duplicate this. And drag this over to the other wheel. Nice little thing to learn. You notice how this is not, it's not an even square. And that's because I was looking at it in projected view. And it went straight for that that angle I was viewing at. So I'm going to create this again. 0.1, 1, too many tabs. 0.1. Okay, now we got a nice cube. Bring this back down. Try and get it as centered on the wheel as you can. Just kind of eyeball it, but as close as you can get it. I'm probably going to come back later on when I'm adjusting this and trying to get everything perfect in game, and I'm probably going to adjust these anyway. But the closer you get from the start, the better. Yeah, that can go further off. Okay, now let's make sure we have our front and our rear balanced. That looks good. Okay, now we have 4 cubes with no weight assigned to them. What I want to do is I'm going to want to assign the rest of the weight that I've already removed off of here to these 4 blocks. So I took my original 2,791.326, I subtracted the weight of the wheels, and I gave 10 pounds to the body, so not much. I went and subtracted that, and what I ended up with was a mass of 645.3315. So that is 1/4 of the remaining mass not including the wheels and the little mass that I put on the body. Now I go down to my mass tab. I'm going to go ahead and assign that mass to that cube, and I want to make sure that I uncheck the box that says do not change the total mass, because I want it to change the total mass. I want my vehicle to have that full mass of 2,791.326. So I'm going to apply this and then do that to the other the other 3 boxes. And it's important that these all have the same mass to them, because what I'm doing here is I'm balancing the vehicle using these cubes of mass, and it affects the center of gravity of the vehicle. It has a huge effect on how the vehicle reacts in game. Now I'm going to want to select all 4, because as you will see, they're probably not at the height that we want them at. So I'm going to go left view. Yep, see they're up a little high. So I'm going to bring them down. And you'll see it moves my center of gravity, which is this little dot with the blue X on it. You probably want that a little lower. I think that'll work for now. Right at the back of the driver's seat. Okay, now when I select the entire vehicle, you see my mass has gone up. And now I have 4 blocks, which I need to do one more thing to. It's easiest to go ahead and select these from the top. Now when you're working with geometry in Arma, there's a couple things you need to have done. These need to be triangulated, these need to be closed, and they need to be convex component hull. So since these are new blocks that I've just brought in, I'm going to go and hit the triangulation button, which was the backslash up on your number pad. I'm going to make sure they're closed. Reselect them. I'm going to go structure, convexity, component convex hull. Now you see I've got 4 more components down here, and I can click on the component and select. Now those are effective mass. Now for geometry physics, go back to projected. You'll notice in the geometry LOD, we've got the wheels in here. We don't need wheels for geometry physics. Geometry physics is just the hull of the vehicle, and it should be simpler than your regular geometry. You'll notice the geometry LOD has 120 points, 90 faces. What I did was I selected the body without the wheels, and I copied it. I created a new LOD by right-clicking, creating new, and then clicked on properties and assigned it to the geometry physics LOD, not the geometry physics old, but the geometry physics LOD. And now we go here to our physics LOD, and I pasted it in. You'll notice it goes directly in the exact same spot, so it's right where it needs to be. It's considerably less points and less faces, so it's a simpler object. It's already component convex hull because it's an Arma 2 object which had geometry, so that's already been done by Bohemia. You can always check that. I always advise checking, and you can go through here and find non-closed. There's nothing red, so it didn't find anything non-closed, and you can find non-convexities, and it didn't find any non-convexities. And that just tells you that your geometry is good. And then one last thing you need to do for your physics LOD is select what you pasted in there and make sure it has no mass, because your geometry physics shouldn't have any mass on it. So that's it for geometry and physics for the moment. We're going to be coming back to this if I have to do any major changes when I go to get the vehicle in game. Now we're going to move on to our memory LOD. Now the memory LOD is made up of multiple points which have these name selections attached to them, and the name selections are defined in your config and your model as doing different things, being assigned to different things. Like what I'm looking at right now is the pointer, the direction for this headlight. So Konek P Svetla is basically for the updated version of the name selections. That would be like, you know, light R direction. Then we can go to, it's probably P Svelto, where's it gonna be at? P Svelto, that's going to be the actual source of the light. So you have P Svelto, and then you have Konek, which is the direction for P Svelto. All of these, the Arma 2 ones, they're going to be in Czech, because that's where Bohemia is located. So a lot of the stuff they did in the early days comes out in Czech. The Arma 3 stuff has a lot of new name selections that are going to be in English. Makes it a little easier. You can find the updated information on what to name stuff in the Arma 3 samples. Now this is the folder for the test car in the Arma 3 samples. If you do not have the Arma 3 samples yet, you can open up Steam, click on Library, Tools, and download the Arma 3 samples. Now the Arma 3 samples are a pack of P3Ds and configs and model CFGs for different things that Arma has, or that Bohemia has created for the game. So here we have a sample house, and the sample house has, you know, the damaged and the ruined versions, the model CFG, the different config files that come with it. Helicopter has the same thing, you know, it's how to do a rotor, how to make a helicopter, the wreck of a helicopter, all the different files that are associated with making it do what it does. We are worried today about the test car and the associated config, model CFG, and points within this vehicle. Now, I can go within the P3D, go to memory points, and this sample file shows me a general idea of what to place in the memory LOD, what needs to go here, what I should name it, all the important stuff to have a vehicle in and working. Now you'll notice that a lot of this stuff is similar but named a little different. So there's some things that we're going to have to go in here and add. There's also some updated things that Arma 3 has that Arma 2 doesn't have. You'll notice I've got wheel axis, wheel steering axis. In Arma 3, I'm going to have wheel axis, wheel bound, wheel hide, and then steering axis. So there's some memory points that we're going to have to go in and add in that aren't already there, which is the fun part, especially getting them in and set right. So first thing I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go ahead and edit the wheel memory points, because that's going to be the biggest thing that we're going to work on today, is getting the balance of the vehicle and the suspension and the wheels in correctly. So I always start with the driver's front wheel, or front left wheel, and you'll notice I have a wheel axis already defined. I have wheel steering and wheel steering axis. What I don't have is the wheel hide and the wheel bound. So I'm going to take a look at where this wheel bound is located. And you'll notice that the wheel bound is at the bottom of the wheel, and it's centered right at the base of the suspension component, so right at the center of the rim. Now I'm going to look at the Humvee and see if I have anything nearby that's similar. And I don't, but I do have these 2 points. I've got this point here and this point here. Now I can base off the middle of these 2 points. Is where I'm going to go ahead and place my bound. So right about here. So I find the location I want. I hit insert to place a new point. Now that looks alright. It's centered by eye. It's not perfect. I'm going to have to come back and probably adjust it later. But for now, it'll work. Now I go back to the left, and you'll notice it's not level with where it needs to be. So I'm going to hit the Y. So I move it on my Y-axis, and I'm going to bring this back down level with these other 2 points. And I can even bring it over on the X to get it directly in line with these other 2. So I'll go back to my top. That looks good. Now I want to name it. And I want to name it exactly how I have it named in this sample. Wheel _1 _1 _ so that's going to be wheel 1, which is the front row of wheels, _1, which is driver's side, and then bound. So just new and wheel 1 1 bound. Now when this refreshes, it'll go over to the spot that it's supposed to go to. Now I need to do this for all 4 wheels. So let me go ahead, and I probably should have named that after making the other one, because I want to make sure I have these all even. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to go ahead and delete this real quick, and we'll just come back and name this in a minute. And I'm going to copy, paste, and drag this along the x-axis. Get it as close to the center of this other wheel that I can. That actually looks pretty good. And just like the other, when we were doing the geometry, copy these 2. Helps keep things square, and I'm going to move it on the y-axis up here into the middle of the back wheels. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and go through here and name these. Alright. And you may have saw that error message. You can't have two name selections with the same name. Now what else was I missing? The hide. It's like a little further back. That'll work. Alright, that should do it for the wheels. Now these tracks are going to be for the tracks that the vehicle leaves as you're driving. You notice we have those still here in check, but we're going to go through and change those later. I'm just going to do what I need to do to make sure that this moves in game. This pip stuff, this is all the picture-in-picture for your rearview mirrors. These are important if you're making your own vehicle. The Arma 2 stuff's already going to have it. These are your positions to get into the different seats, or the different positions inside the vehicle. Should be good to get started here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, close that down. I'm gonna go ahead and save my changes here. And now we're gonna get started on our config files. The fun stuff. Now, just to explain why this will look a little different than some of the, like say the sample files here. You'll see the sample files have like a, where's it at? Config CPP, and I'm using a config HPP. Now that's because I'm combining all my vehicle configs for all the different vehicles we have into one main config CPP using the HPP files. Now my config CPP is going to have the CFG patches and the base information for the vehicles. So all the base defines, and then down here at the bottom we'll go ahead and call the HPP files for the specific vehicle that we're working on. This will be the last thing that I do. Right now, oops, I didn't even have this right on the right monitor. So I'll go back over that again. You'll see the class CFG patches. We've got, you know, editor categories, subcategories, the base information for the vehicles, and then down here at the bottom we have our includes. So we're including the different config HPP files for the different vehicles. This will be the last thing we do, so I'll come back and add this in once I'm ready for it. I've also got my crew animations defined here. You'll notice I've already gone ahead and I added in the Humvee driver and the Humvee cargo. And then I went and defined them down here at the bottom of my vehicle defines. Now you can find this information if you're using Arma 2 animations inside the CA files. So let me go ahead and get this reloaded real quick. Just to show you real quick, I've got a CA folder right here. Now, this is the unpacked files for Arma 2 and Arma 2 OA. I'm going to come down here. Wheeled is where it was. You see, here's my Humvee folder. This isn't the licensed data pack. This is just my game files that have been unpacked so I can copy important information off of them. Like you'll see, we've got all the textures that we used. Now in this data folder, go back in wheeled data, you'll see I've got an anim folder in here. And within this anim folder is a bunch of Humvee RTM files. Now these RTM files define the movements that your character model will do. And each vehicle needs to have some kind of character animation for while they're sitting inside the vehicle. I'm not going to cover how to create your own animations. That's a little bit more in-depth. But for porting the Arma 2 stuff, you can very easily use the Arma 2 stuff because all the information's already there and available. So I went ahead and inside of my Humvee file, in my data file, I created an anims folder. Anims, anim, you can name it what you want. It just depends on how you path it. And then I went and copied my Humvee cargo and driver RTMs plus my killed in actions. These are the animations that the players do, or that the characters do when they die inside the vehicle. It's important that you have these in here. And then I just included a model CFG with the character model defined inside. And then inside my crew animations, I'm going to go ahead and go take a look at a config inside wheeled. Usually this will contain the information that you're looking for. And here we go. I've got Humvee driver and Humvee cargo. Since I'm not doing gunner, I don't need either of these. And then what I do need is the information for the Humvee driver and cargo positions. Okay, so here we have the class KIA Humvee driver, and it defaults to the default die. All this information I just went and took, other than the gunner information, and I pasted in my own crew animations. You can do the same, or you can go about it the hard way and do it yourself. This is the easiest way to do it when you're porting the Arma 2 stuff to Arma 3. So I can go ahead and close that back up. So now that you see how I'm doing my folder structure, the other way to do it, if you're just porting one vehicle, is to leave this as a config CPP and let this have your CFG patches and your basic defines already in it, just like the sample files have it. And then one last thing I'm going to do to this, because I do this to all of mine, you don't have to, but it allows me to name them all different. This is going to be, actually, just so I don't rename it. Don't open it. DSRHMMWV.hpp. It now has a unique name that I can include and not have to worry about all of my config files all being configs HPPs. Now these we will get to in a bit. Go ahead and open up my config. Now you'll see I've got some stuff defined here that I don't need, like including the CFG patches and the basic defines. This is all stuff that I've already got inside of my config CPP file here in my root. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all this because it's unnecessary. And my HPP file is just going to start with defining my vehicle. Now this came from the sample files. This is the sample config CPP file. So we're going to go ahead and edit this because it already has it's actually got way too much information. So we're going to remove some more stuff later on. But I'm just going to go working down line by line. So beginning here, I'm going to define my base class. So this is going to be DSR underscore Humvee base. And it's going to inherit from Arma 3's car F class, which already has a lot of things defined in it that you don't want to have to waste your time on. First thing we got to do is put in the directory that our model's going to be in and name it appropriately. So for me, it's DSR vehicles / HMMWV / HMMWV. There we go. Now I don't have to put P3D here because it's expected that it's a P3D. Now, picture an icon. I went ahead and I got these already in between the videos. I took them from the Arma 2 files. They are located icon and map icon. And I just copied them in here into my data file under UI. So I've got my Humvee and I've got my map icon. So we're going to go ahead and change this path here from the placeholder. If I could spell today. And do the icon. Alright. Now the display name. This is going to be what the car is going to be named in the editor. I want this to be named HMMWV base. Now hidden selections. This is for defining hidden selections so you can go back through and retexture later. Now your hidden selections are going to be defined as areas of the model that you define as being able to be retextured. You'll see here we've only got one, which is camo. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this because it's already correct. Camo 1. If you have more than one section of your vehicle that you want to be able to retexture, the helicopters that we do have multiple hidden selection textures. It would be Camo 1 comma, camo to whatever you name them. I leave them as camo. I'm not going to mess with this right now, because this will be all the fine-tuning stuff that I go ahead and mess around with later. And this will, define how the vehicle turns. It defines how it accelerates, the armor value. That's all stuff that I'm not too worried about right now. Now, transport soldiers. That is the number of cargo except the driver. So that is every passenger that is in the vehicle. Now, there's a front passenger and 2 passengers in the Humvee. So this is set to 3. This, don't have to worry about too much right now. Transport items. This is stuff that's already in the vehicle when it spawned. And I'm not interested in having things spawn in the vehicle, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that. Now the hit points. These define the different hit points within your vehicle that you have defined in your hit point LOD. You'll see, if I go back to projected, different areas of the vehicle have memory points placed that define where they take hits at. And this is how the damage works in game. This is how it knows when you shoot a bullet at a vehicle in this area, this part is going to take damage, and it's going to do X or it's going to do Y. All of these are named using the Arma 2 check nomenclature. You'll notice here in the A3 vehicle, light, engine. So it's a little different. We can go back and change that stuff later. That's not a big deal right now. Not even going to worry about that because I just want to get this in and see if it drives. Now, driver action. Remember those crew animations we were talking about earlier? That's where you're going to go ahead and put this information. So what we have here is Humvee driver. Now our cargo actions. What do we want the cargo to do? Well, we want our cargo to do the cargo action. Get in, out. That's all good. Now, include sounds, HPP, picture-in-picture, and physics. That is these 3 files right here. What you are telling it to do, and this is how HPP files work, it is telling you to take these files that you filled out and include all of that information right here in this section of the config file. This allows you to keep your config real clean. It's easier to edit. Everything's kind of broken up into the specific files. Now you can go ahead and you can put everything here in the config if you choose to. It just makes it a whole lot bigger and it's a whole lot messier. Now, our memory tracks, remember I was talking about this, track FLL. That's something we're going to have to go and change from the Arma 3 one or the Arma 2 ones. But again, something we'll do here in a little bit. Now, class damage. Class damage is your damage RV max. You remember from video 1 if you watched it. I've got body damage, body destruct. What you do is you put these together based off of how you've defined them on the vehicle. So I have defined my body as being Humvee body to RV mat. So I want comma, because there's more files to follow. Damage.rvmat. Destruct. Now, what I just did was I defined the RV mat that I have on the vehicle in the model right now. So if I were to go and look here in one of these LODs, and I want to see, oh, where would, yeah, camo would probably work. And I open up the textures. No, that's not going to be it. We have a hull. Usually hull does it. Oh, here. So tools, mass textures, and you'll see I've got the Humvee Body 2 RV mat defined. But you don't see body damage or body destruct. What I'm doing here is I'm saying for my body RV mat, if the vehicle is damaged, change it to the damaged RV mat. And if I've gotten to the point where my vehicle or my body is destroyed, use the destruct RV mat. Now I need to define these for it to be able to access the correct textures depending on the damage state of the vehicle. So my glass, it's going to be a little different. And you'll see like the glass doesn't have damage. So one thing you can do, like where's the regular glass? Okay. I can change this. Come on. So what I have is I have a glass RV mat that is assigned to the all the glass inside the vehicle or on the outside of the vehicle. Since I don't have the damage RV mat already created from Arma 2, what I've done is I've said if the areas of the vehicle that I've defined with the Humvee glass RV mat get damaged, use the base Arma 3 glass vehicle damage RV mat. And then the same thing for destruct. It's just going to go ahead and use the same one. So you won't see a difference between damage and destruct. But you will see damage on everything that has this RV mat attached to it. Now I have my interior. Now let me make sure which one I'm using. Interior base. Okay. So I want to change this. USR. .rv map. So now the interior also gets broken windows on the inside. That'll work for now. You don't need to get too crazy with it. Now this is where you define your exhaust positions. Again, this is another memory point. You'll notice this one says exhaust position. It's going to be different for the Arma 2 vehicles because they utilize the different naming. But like you see, I don't even think the sample vehicle has it. So this says position, exhaust to position, and exhaust to direction. We go to the here, we go to memory points, and one of these is probably going to be the exhaust if it has been marked at all. It might not have ever even been made. That's probably it right there. So I want to find that memory point. Not that it's that big of a deal at the moment. But you can just start selecting until one of them turns red. There we go. So believe it or not, that is exhaust direction and that is exhaust position. What I can easily do is there we go. Don't need to worry about that. Clean this up a bit. Now reflectors, we're going to come back later on. This is where you define the lighting on your vehicle. And when it says reflectors, it actually just means the lights inside. And you define the position and the direction and the hit points and all the other critical information. But we're just gonna go ahead and let this all slide right now because I just want to see the vehicle in game. Vent handlers, I do not need any of this. So I can go ahead and delete the event handlers for now. If you eventually want to do some event handlers on your vehicle, you can add that back in. Now, hidden selection textures. This is where you go ahead and you define the texture from up here. Wherever the hell I put it. Hidden selections. Camo 1. What is Camo 1? Well, Camo 1 is this texture right here. My base body. Don't need this for the Humvee. And I'm also not going to need the HUD, because we don't utilize that. Now this is where we get to define different variations of the vehicle. This is just a different base class. So if I was going to have different base classes, like say the Avenger version or the M2 machine gun version, I could define them as separate base classes. But I'm not going to do that right now. So what I've got here, I'm going to change this. Remember that name we gave it at the beginning? Because I want this new vehicle to inherit from my base. So we are going to have DSR, HMM, WV, Woodland, F. So that's going to be the Woodland Camo Humvee. And it's going to use the Humvee base configs that we just finished doing. I'm going to leave the scope and everything the same. You can always change these based on your needs. Scope and Scope Curator define whether or not this is public or private. If you want people to be able to place things in the editor. get rid of this because I don't need it. Actually, I want to make sure I've got this up in here. And I'm going to name this Humvee Woodland. So when I go ahead and see it inside the editor, I'm going to know that that's the Woodland SUV. Now if I were to make a desert version down below here, I'm going to go ahead and change my textures, my hidden selection textures, like we have right here. I'm going to put that here and change that to Humvee Body 2 or whatever the other version of the body texture is, the sand version, or whatever you decide to name it. Right now I go ahead and just chop this stuff off. Okay, and everything's... Nope, I seem to have missed one here. Just a second. Oh, that's because I deleted a bunch of other junk. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. So that's my basic config. You see I'm calling these other three files that we're going to go ahead and edit. So they're already called here. I'm going to go ahead, shrink this up, go back to my main directory where all my stuff is. And this is the important one I want to edit. I'm going to edit the physics. Now this stuff, not too worried about editing. This is where you define how your vehicle runs, define how much power it's got, its max speed, how much fuel it carries, how the suspension handles. What I'm worried about right now, and if you remember, I showed you earlier back here down in the suspension area, I want to edit these three things here. So what I've gone and done is I already pulled up the suspension calculator. I already entered in my information into it. And I've come up with, this is the great thing about the suspension calculator, I placed my wheel circumference in, I placed my tire radius in, I've placed my vehicle mass in, and the number of tires, and it provides me with all the information that I'm going to need just to get my vehicle started. So I'm going to pull this back over here. And we're going to start editing this. Now, wheel circumference. You want to make sure this matches the wheel circumference of the wheel of the model that you're editing. So this was a 16.5 inch wheel, and this is what that 16.5 inch wheel ended up being circumference wise in meters. So what the circumference should be is twice the radius of your wheel times pi, and then change that into or convert that into meters from feet. Place that information in there. Now I want to go down and I want to find sprung mass. And I want to edit this to what my sprung mass comes out to in my calculator. And my calculator says my sprung mass should be 698. Now you can go ahead and you can do these calculations on your own, not using this calculator. You'll end up with something almost exactly similar to this, depending on how good you are at math. It's just a whole lot easier to use this this automated calculator here. Now spring strength. I need to go ahead and change what it says my spring strength should be. 17446. And then my spring damper rate. 2792. Alright, and then as you can see, there's a whole lot more information in here. This is the information we were editing earlier, which is why it's important that we have all the memory points defined. Wheel bound, axis, damper. Otherwise, this PhysX config's not going to work. So here we have axis, bound. What this is also looking for is damper. We have that defined. Where do we have that defined? I don't think we have that defined yet. Yep, damperland, there we go. It's defined in the geometry. Okay, so we go ahead and save our PhysX HPP file. Now sounds, I'm not going to mess around with sounds too much yet. That'll be a fine-tuning thing. I haven't gotten too much into creating my own vehicle sounds. I will say that the Arma 2 sounds need work if you want to make them work with the Arma 3 vehicle sound system. It's a lot different than the Arma 2 sound system is, and the files don't necessarily just copy right over. At least for the cars or the wheeled vehicles. Helicopters seems to be a bit different. So what I have right now, these original files, I'm just going to place on my desktop because I don't need them at the moment. So I've got my textures done, I've got my config done, set my model up. Now my model CFG needs to be edited. Now the model CFG defines the different actions that your vehicle can do. It defines the bones or the skeleton of your vehicle. And there's some things you need to come in here that I'm just using the Arma 3 sample model CFG again for vehicles. So it's going to have a bunch of information in here that's not needed. To get your vehicle started, you don't have to worry about it too much. So what I want to do is in the skeleton section, I have class vehicle already defined. It's inheriting from default. Class car inherits from class vehicle. And these are the skeleton bones that are defined. So these are just the basic skeleton bones. Now civil car. I'm going to go ahead and change this to HMMWV skeleton. And this Humvee skeleton is going to inherit from car. So my skeleton is inheriting from this skeleton, which is inheriting from this skeleton, which inherits from default. That's how that all works. And we'll have to come back in and put some stuff in here in a minute. But for now, we've now got our CFG models class. And again, you have your default. You have your class vehicle. And you'll see things in here like the lights. This is for weapons if you have one. And then this goes to class car. And now what I need to do is come down here to the civil, or the test car. And this is going to be Humvee. Actually, I'm going to name this, yep, exactly as my P3D is named. Need to change the skeleton name. So this inherits from Humvee skeleton. Now I don't have camo 2 or camo 3, so I'm just going to get rid of that in my sections. And this defines the damaged wheels, the damper movement, driving wheel, steering axis, fuel, all the information that you want to animate on your vehicle. Now a lot of this isn't going to work simply because I don't have this stuff on here. I'm not worried about it. All I want to do is make sure that I'm defining my vehicle and my vehicle's skeleton. Boom. Now remember we named this DSR Humvee. I'm going to come back here to my main config. And now I'm going to include it. Now, for some of you guys used to editing SQF and whatnot, if you've done any of that, when you're doing includes, you're working in these configs, you don't have to put commas after these. Or all you got to do is hashtag include, and then make sure you put it in quotations. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to try and pack it. See if we've got any errors. Now, I use Micro's cancel. PBO project, and I use the subscription version. So it's the newer version. It does a lot better at error finding. It can be really annoying for people that are new, that don't understand how to fix a bunch of the errors. But I'm telling you, it is great for being able to at least get your vehicle in and loading into the game generally without breaking a whole bunch of stuff. I've already got my source folder set to my DSR vehicles in my P drive. And I've got an output mod folder, so I'm outputting the packed version of this into a specific file that I've selected, which in this case is my @Desolation folder. This is where I put all of my test stuff to pack. Don't need to sign the PBO right now. You would sign PBOs when they're ready to be distributed. I highly recommend signing any files that you're going to be putting out to the public. But right now, I'm just going to deselect that full build, and I like noisy output. I like to get as much information as I can from my pack. And I'm going to go ahead and select Crunch. Now what it's going to do is it's start going through all of my vehicle files. And it's going to take all of my HPP files, and it's going to include them where they're supposed to be included. And then it's going to take my main config and generate the huge config. It's going to pack the model information and all the textures into the files and convert everything into a working P3D so you can go ahead and load that into game. This is going to take some time. Generally, at this point, my vehicles take 200 to 300 seconds to completely pack. We'll see how this goes. And then this is what I was looking for. I've got an error, a packing error. The wonderful thing about Micro's tools is it will tell you when there is an error inside of your inside of whatever it is that you're trying to pack before you then get it into game and can't figure out why it's not working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go view outputs, scroll all the way down to the last thing it did and see what this error is. So in file, DSR vehicles Humvee, DSR Humvee HPP line 33, I'm missing an inheritance class. So what that's telling me is I have something that's calling something that I have not already defined. So I'm going to go back to DSR Humvees HPP, and I'm going to go to line 33 and see what that is. Class hit points. So I have not defined hit points. And what that means is I have not defined that in my main config as the same thing as what's there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, just to get this going, there we go. I'm just going to remove that. And we're going to try pack again. And we got another error again. Probably going to be another inheritance class. Line 35. Where are we at? Line 35. Okay, yeah. So you know, I don't need all this information right now. I just want to define my hit points. Just because I get like this, I want to make sure that's nice and straight. Now this kind of happens a lot the first time I go back and use the base config file from the sample files. I've already got a basic config HPP file that I use for all my vehicles, so everything's defined according to what I have set up in my main config CPP inside my root. So I don't have to deal with all of this. Let's see what my output is this time. Oh, I forgot to add something here. 36. That would probably be it. Let's just get past this config. Now, as frustrating as this could be when you're working on something and you keep running into errors, it's so much easier to go ahead and deal with them before you go ahead and load it into game, and suddenly it's not working, it's not appearing, the game's crashing, and you don't understand why, because some of the errors can be very vague. Sounds HPP, define, altered without undefined. See, I didn't even edit this file. What are we doing here? And then sometimes you'll run into errors with stuff that's just basic stuff. You didn't even edit it. Line 41. Define altered without undefined. Why are you erroring out? Tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to use another one of mine just so we get this in here and get work done. Yeah, let's cheat and use the sound one from the Humvee. As you can see, the binarization process, at least on my PC, because I got a lot of other stuff that it's binarizing, as well as just this model, takes quite some time. I tend to just go surf the internet or check Discord. And we got an error after all that. What's my error? Oh, you kidding me? So what that means, somewhere in Humvee, okay. I need to check all of these for this. There we go. You forget to change one file. And now you get to wait that entire time again. Let me just double check everything here. I'm glad I did that. Must have copied these all over late. Alright, now we should be able to pack. Alright, now this means that we have managed to put our model together well enough to get it to pack. Now what we want to do is we want to go test it. So what I have, two more folders open. One of these is my P drive where everything gets packed into. I'm just going to refresh this. And I'm going to select, where's my vehicles? Vehicles. Copy. And then I'm going to paste them here into my Arma 3 directory in my Desolation folder. Okay. Now I can go ahead and launch into the game, and we can test this out. This is where it becomes long and arduous, is repacking, loading back up into Arma, testing, deciding you don't like it, closing Arma, making some changes, repacking. Generally, I would not pack directly into my my vehicles folder with all of my other vehicles. I would just be using the one folder, getting called in a config that only has the one HPP file being called. Packs a lot quicker. This is my favorite map to test vehicles out on. Okay, now what I want to do, I just want to see if the vehicle's going to pop up. Car. Have we made an error? Looks like we have. It's located in the wrong section. I'm going to have to go back in and change that. I want to place it without crew. Actually, bin config, CFG vehicles, hit wheels. So there's a problem with the memory or with the hit points, which isn't a problem. And as you can see, I seem to have gotten some textures here on one of my shadow LODs. Seems to have the proxies. I can get rid of that in a bit. So now I want to place a playable character, so I can go ahead and go check this vehicle out. Let's test and see if she moves. Well, I can get in. That's a good sign. I've broken my wrist, but I'm holding on to the steering wheel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get out real quick, and I just want to check the other seats. Alright, so I am in position. Excellent. Move to the driver's seat. I'm going to turn the sound off here. Here, I'm going to turn the music off. Now we're going to go for a quick test drive. And you can see I need to flip this because it steers the wrong direction. And the vehicle acts really funny because I haven't fine-tuned anything. But the good news is I have all four wheels on the ground and the vehicle moves in the direction that I'm pointing it at. Anybody believe this thing can catch some air? I bet you it can. Never done that in Humvee. And of course, yeah, it sounds like our SUV because I haven't edited the sounds, and that's where you can go in and really have some fun editing the, you know, the pitch and the tone. Yeah. See, this is what I love. about this map. It just looks great. And it's got so many different terrains to test this out on. And then I'll show you one thing really quick here. So we're going to go test here in the middle of the crater. And then I will show you specifically which part of that config affects this. So we're going to go down into the water. We're going to see if the vehicle can ford. Yeah, I seem to be a little light in the front end, but I can fix that. And I need to stop spinning out. And my geometry seems to be working pretty well. Am I going to bump into this? Yep. So we got working geometry. Not going to test the physics because that always does funny things. But what we have down in here is a nice deep puddle. And I can go check whether or not this thing sinks. Definitely going to have to make some changes to the suspension and how much wheel friction it has. That's all stuff that can be done within the config and the physics. As you can edit how it runs, and so we see the vehicle's able to ford into some pretty deep water, which is good. If this was any deeper, we'd probably get to the point where you'd start taking damage. But as it is, the vehicle's able to go about as deep as it should be able to go, and I don't take any damage. Well, that's just about going to wrap it up. Everything I'm going to do to this thing from here on out is just going to be fine-tuning. So, a lot of changes, a lot of packing, a lot of reloading Arma. But as you can see, we got a vehicle, it's in. It needs some tweaks like the shadow LODs and whatnot, but there you have the Arma 2 Humvee, very basically ported in to Arma 3. Thanks for joining today, guys. It's been a blast, but I'm going to have to call it a night if I can find OBS.